Thank you so much, Eike. I think there will be lots of questions. That's why I appeared on the screen, because I'm sure that you would like to have a little bit of time for discussion. At the moment, I can't see people and I can't see hands. Yeah, please, the floor is open for questions if anybody wants to come up and ask the first question. Tina, yes, please. Go ahead. Yes, please, Tina.
Hi, Eike. I always enjoy your presentations. A quick question. I realized when you present it now, it's usually a yes-no decision, what you can do with the models. Could you simultaneously actually model microdosing versus ISFM? Like having 2 or 3 choices at the same time? Because I think that often in real farmers' lives decisions, it's more of these questions, and then under which conditions maybe do I apply microdosing versus ISFM? You showed the scenarios, so is that feasible?
Yeah, we can certainly do this. So some things work then and some others don't. I mean, there's no problem in simulating outcomes of lots of different options. Usually for this value of information, which is kind of the coolest thing we do, there needs to be a yes-no situation, but we can, of course, compare things with each other. We can do pairwise comparisons and we can still do value of information, but it's also easy to just compare, to simulate different options and just compare the outcomes. That's also possible. Yeah.
Just a quick question from my side on this one. Even if the experts are not calibrated the same, because you get input from different groups of experts if you have the different data sets, basically?
I mean, so hopefully they calibrate the same. It should still, yes, it should still work. Hopefully, if they're calibrated. I mean, somebody who's calibrated should be calibrated, so it shouldn't really affect things so much, unless they're completely off in their calibration. I think that should be fine.
All right. Good. Thank you. I've got 2 questions, one comment and one question in the chat. One is from SM. I'm not sure who SM is. Thank you very much. He or she says, how do you incorporate past literature into the models, please? Do you look at the links and or results data as well? For the results data, how do you choose the best data to incorporate? Thank you. Maybe you can just open your camera and say who you are with your full name, please.
Okay, I know her.
Aha, there we have one of your group. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome.
We do try to incorporate everything, but we try not to choose the best data, because who knows what the best data is really, yeah? And I mean, often in the literature, you only get kind of point estimates for different things. Yeah, so and that's actually usually the uncertainty we're trying to capture isn't really captured in the literature very well. Yeah, so it's often people give you a precise number that may actually not represent the uncertainty in the decision-making context you have now. And sometimes the data is from a different place or it's from the past, but decisions radiate into the future. Yeah? So we need to understand the uncertainty going forward, which isn't really directly what the literature gives us. So usually when we have data in the literature already, we'd look at all of it together and then basically still make our own call. Yeah? So based on all of this, we would then identify this confidence interval or probability distribution that we put into the model. It involves subjective judgment to some extent, which is a dirty word for too many scientists, but it's still even required, even if we have hard data in the literature, because it never is precisely what applies in a decision-making situation. Unless it's like a natural constant, like the speed of light or whatever, then we take that. But most of the things, it's not the case.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that response. I quickly read the message that Andrew Bell left. He had to leave. So he says, apologies to jump out before discussion plays out. Thank you for the presentation, Eike. I remember the CG-wide effort to embrace modeling.
I remember. No, I remember too. He was definitely involved. Yes, I had forgotten. Yeah, right.
And I really value the approach of asking, would knowing more about this change, more about this change my decision? I have spent lots of time recently thinking about models as helping people understand the consequences of their assumptions. Do you feel the approach extends well past parameter uncertainties to examining structural uncertainties? You can give your answer to us in the audience, or you can, or you can send an email to Andrew.
That's a good question. I mean, ideally, so it was on one of my slides. Ideally, we don't only consider uncertainties in parameters in the variable values that we put in, but also in kind of the structure of the model and the impact mechanism. But of course, it's much more difficult to do this. Yeah? But ideally, if we really have major uncertainties about how the impact, how the causal chain really works, then we could model different pathways basically and treat them as equally likely. But it is much more complicated than just changing the numbers. And yeah, in principle, it's possible, but I don't think we've ever actually done that.
Okay, so there is room for further research probably, and you can contact Andrew. If you want to listen to Andrew's colloquium presentation, I invite you to look at the website, Sustainable Land Management website, where his presentation also is on. It was a very insightful presentation as well. Cool. Are there any more questions or comments, or also reactions from the Coins and Declaré projects on what the sneak preview of Dorcas's research that Eike presented there? Any comment, any surprises or any confirmations that you found in the model? Jonas, please.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the floor, and thank you very much for this interesting talk. And yes, we are really excited about this analysis, and I have some ideas how to include this to some working packages where it's about one aspect of the monitoring system and one aspect of like a synthesis to give some suggestions to farmers which kind of practice or measure could be successful in the future. And I could maybe I have one question: is it possible to distribute this spatially, that we have in different regions different results of this decision systems?
Yes, it is. We've thought about this a lot. I mean, often it depends on exactly what decisions we're focusing on what spatial means. I mean, most decisions are made at pixel scale, of course, like a political decision wouldn't be. Of course, when it comes to kind of farmers making decision, of course, we could account for difference in the environment and basically run the model at the pixel scale or at some sort of high spatial resolution. It may take a bit more computing, I guess, if you do it many times, but it could be done, certainly. I mean, the models themselves are pretty simple. It's not very complicated, but of course, we do run them 10,000 times usually. So it kind of blows up when you have a very high spatial resolution, but it's possible, definitely.
Cool. And maybe a quick question, the Declaré analysis. Dorcas, when do you think that you're as far as presenting any of those details? Hi, Dorcas. Welcome.
Thing to show. Yeah.
Sorry, you were frozen for a second. Can you just repeat your...
We are working on the code and trying to also improve the conceptual model, but we hope that by the status seminar, we'll have a preliminary result to share with the Declaré project.
Cool. Okay, so Declaré team, Tan and team, you can expect some hot off the press data from Dorcas in 10 days' time. Very good. So this is a good teaser for everybody to join the status seminar. Excellent. Are there any more comments? Any additions? Any experiences? I think from my side, there are lots of what I should say, confirmations of things that I had already learned before. A very nice illustration of some of the specificities of the work and a nice introduction generally. But I think there is really not enough time to go further deeply into the discussion. So I really look forward also to discussing with Dorcas and Peter further during the time. But Tina has her hand up. Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a nice final question. Thinking of let's say only Coins and Declare and all the innovations they do within their projects, Eike. In theory, just I mean, I know it takes a lot of time now, a PhD student concentrating only on ISFM and another researcher looking more at one. But could we have had all the different innovations then combined and basically coming out with recommendations after 4 years of research? The Ghanaian government should concentrate, I don't know, instead of ISFM then on Wagashi cheese innovations, because that brings most net present value to the communities. Like, could we tangle out if we, use your approach to more research projects to identify what is now the best innovation? Because that's what I'm still struggling. Like, when we want now to say, shall they invest in more cheese procedures versus maybe concentrating on ISFM versus this and this? Could in theory your model be used in this way with somehow reasonable labor and input costs? I mean, keeping that in mind, that research is more.
Yes.
Yes.
No, and so yeah.
That's
no,
very short. Okay.
Yes. So the thing, my vision is always that this will go a lot faster, and we could do a lot more. In practice, it often takes a long time because it's usually a big learning curve involved. So I think the main challenge is not that this is particularly complicated. The main challenge is that this is different from what we normally do, and everybody coming in needs to kind of familiarize themselves with the concept and all the techniques, and then by the time this is all kind of second nature to them, they're kind of busy writing manuscripts, and it's the next learning curve. And I do envision one day will be a lot faster, but it's just, again, it's like always like a new learning curve for new people. It's just the academic environment. So the people that we learned this from, Harvard Decision Research, they were basically our mentors when we first started. They don't know so much anything about land management, and sometimes it was a little bit superficial, but they were faster, and they did this more on a more industrial, more commercial level. I think it could be faster, yes, and could be scaled up. Again, maybe one day we'll be capable of doing this. Dorcas has done a great job, and Peter too. It is complicated, and especially working with the stakeholders, working from here. I mean, some things.
Sure.
I think with a dedicated team of maybe, I don't know, 5-10 people on site, connected to people, and being flexible and having workshops whenever needed, could get a lot more done for sure.
Okay, but that means then it's really getting quite time and labor intensive if you want to really map many different projects and seeing like where's now for government best to invest in for that moment.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, it's less labor intensive than doing the research the usual way, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the big benefit is that through these models, I mean, yeah, there may be all kinds of ways to improve it, and maybe there's some things that are not quite right or whatever. But this approach allows us to get a summary relatively quickly of something that's otherwise pretty complicated. And I mean, ISFM is of course something. I'm not saying that we're replacing everything that's been done before, but of course this has been a research focus for decades. Yeah, and still it seems that it's difficult to conclude whether this is a good idea or not. Still, after all of this work, and I think even though yes, of course, this has taken some time and effort, but we have a nice summary now of. And a transparent model that everybody can now tell us what's wrong with it. Yeah, can make improvements. We have a summary for a large body of research that allows us to move forward. So I think it is very effective at what it does. Yeah, can it with the same resources evaluate 100 decisions? Maybe not.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Okay, I've seen another hand, Atifullah, but we're very, very, very brief because we were actually going to close already. So please.
Yeah. So actually, my question. Thank you, Eike. My question is that in the developing context, mostly this decision-based planning is overlooked. So are there any practical steps or ways or approaches to bring like the policymakers and governments into this environment of decision-based planning?
Yeah. I mean, there's some countries that have nice mechanisms. I would cut all their funding until they do it. That's the American. No, okay. No, I don't know. I mean, of course, I think there's some decision makers out there who it may come natural to, actually, but mostly the ones that kind of come out of business settings. So I think for them it may be relatively easy to communicate this. It's often actually scientists that have the biggest problem with this approach. Somehow it's not such a natural fit. It's difficult. Actually, we've often had a hard time convincing people because of the subjectivity that's involved, and it all seems like this magical process, and it's not easy. I do think many decision situations would benefit from doing things this way. I mean, decision makers also, many feel really powerful making decisions without any information, because that's what they applied for. They want to be decision makers and not people who just follow some technical advice from people like us. I don't know, hard to say how to convince decision makers. We can all work on it and see. Hopefully one day they listen. There have been situations where decision makers have been very open to this kind of stuff. There's some public health examples. There's some companies that have mainstreamed decision analysis throughout most things they do. So it's out there. It's in other fields much more than in agriculture. It's not very common, but in other fields in business, it's actually not an exotic concept at all.
I would say the more people get in touch with it, the more interested they will become. And it's always the people who are the weakest point in the models, I guess. It's the stakeholders that you get on board and how engaged they are.
Yeah, it's relatively new, and hopefully it will spread and somehow take some roots. I mean, our vision back then in Nairobi was that one day there'll be kind of a generation, a cohort of decision analysts who will be influencing policy all over the place. Maybe that day will still come one day, but you got to start small. The revolution starts here. Please join.
Good. Famous last words, Eike. That was good. It was good to close this. Thank you very much, Eike. Thank you very much, everybody in the audience, for listening and for asking your questions and making your contributions. Thanks, Dokas, for your work within the Interfaces project and that. And for everybody who is traveling to Ghana, I will see you guys in about 10 days' time in Ghana. Have a safe journey. For everybody who stays at home, hold the fort at home. And the next colloquium in this series will only be in September with Peter, by the way. Peter Asaranuama will talk about participatory learning platforms, his experience there. So we will meet next in Ghana for the status seminar, and then we have our normal summer break in July and August, and we'll meet back here in September on the 25th of September. That is the date that we have scheduled already. Thanks very much, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Eike, and have a good rest of the day.